Well, welcome everyone to Conscious Caring Resources, which is another platform of Alzheimer Speaks, where we are just trying to connect people to different services that are available to you in your community and really throughout the world. And here at Alzheimer Speaks, if you're not familiar with us, we have a blog, we have a resource directory, we do webinars called Dementia Chats that focus on dementia and caregiving, and our experts actually have dementia. We also do keynotes and consulting, have our radio platform, and conscious caring is something that we've just added now. We just thought it would be nice to have a physical picture and interactive interview versus just the radio platform for people, so you can kind of see who these people are who are providing services to you. So today I'm glad to introduce you to Scot Cheben, and he's an entrepreneur in the senior care industry, and he's got a couple of great companies that he's going to share with us today. He's the co-founder of CaregivingAnswers.com, which provides free resources and information to those caring for aging loved ones. And he also has a company called the Senior Providers Network that is a specialized employee assistance program, and we'll get into more of that through Scot, since he's the expert, not moi. That's one of the things I love about my job, is I get to learn so much about what's going on out there. So welcome today, Scot. How are you?
Very good, Lori. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you on today, and I'm dying to learn more about CaregivingAnswers.com. So can you tell us a little bit, why did you decide to start that company? I always find that interesting.
Yeah, well, there's kind of an interesting story behind all that. I used to be in home care. I owned my own home care business out in California before moving to Florida. And when I would field phone calls from clients and people that were looking for solutions for their loved ones, I found that a lot of the questions that were coming in were confusing them. So, and let me give you an example about that. So what happens is I would field a phone call that said, hey, I'm looking for somebody to come in and do some wound care for my mom. She just got out of the hospital. And I kind of said, well, you know, we're a home care company and we don't do those sort of things. Let me help you find somebody. And of course, there's like this pause on the phone, and they were like, well, wait a minute. I thought I called a home health care company. And I said, we're a home care company. So one word difference: home care, home health care, complete opposite business, paid differently. One's medical, one's non-medical. I mean, it just very confusing. So the lingo is, you have to understand it in today's society. So you just can't Google something and expect you're going to pop up with the right answers.
That's very true. And I've seen that too myself, even when I sold residential real estate for like 25 years, and that was one of the things that drove me crazy. And what I found was competition would use a name that had traction, even though they weren't providing the same service, just to get the traction. And it was so confusing to the public, or else you'd have the other ones that would come up with a whole different name to try to differentiate themselves. And it was actually the same product as something else, but it's so confusing to the consumer to be able to try to sort it out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and it's not just home care and home health care that's confusing. There's the legal ramification of not having all your legal documents and understanding what each one is unending. You know, what's a power of attorney? What's a advance directive? You know, it's just amazing. So what we did was we put this website together to really give definition, to explain what each one is, and really help somebody out. Now, what we've done is we've actually covered a wide variety of situations with CaregivingAnswers.com to cover financial, fiduciary, legal, home care, home health care. even real estate, which you just touched on. So we have experts that are in the area. So for instance, if someone had a question about advanced medical directive, it's actually answered by a lawyer that does estate planning. So it's not that you're going to get legal advice over the internet, but if you had a question about something specific, what can this power of attorney do, and how can this help me, or how can it hurt me, kind of thing. It is answered by a lawyer, and it's better clarified by a person that's an expert in that industry. So, and real estate and financial fiduciaries, these are people that are experts that are answering these questions.
So let me ask you this, because this is another thing that can be confusing for people. Is your company available to those throughout the U.S., or is it state or county specific? Because laws change in different areas too.
Great question. We are on a national level. It's unfortunate that we do have some people, because the internet really doesn't have borders. So we do have questions coming in a lot from England, but essentially, we do have to apologize because we're not experts in that area. Although we actually updated our business plan to possibly going into overseas markets. But for right now, we're on a national level. And yes, exactly what you said. Every state has a different law and a different way that they cover things. So when we answer questions, unfortunately, it might be in a general context. Mm-hmm. But we always end with, at this point, if we didn't answer your question, you should reach out to a local, state of planning attorney that, can help you answer those questions, because we do research as much as we can, and there's common laws and things that we just don't know the answers to, or don't want to get stuck answering something incorrectly online that people may, come back to say, hey, you said.
Yeah, well, and then you are really getting specific, and then it can be interpreted as giving that legal advice or accounting advice and all of that. So yeah, people have to be very, very careful. Do you have people in other states that you can refer people to, or you just kind of give them a general?
We're working on that. We're actually adding 25 new contributors in certain areas, like financial and things like that. So there are going to be more openings in the future on a national level, and we're looking, into how much we can expand that on a national level. So it's one thing to have your question, and this is the good thing, because not every question is specific to just one answer. So for instance, you may ask a question that might be legal related, but touches on home care or home health care or the cost. So there's always some little aspect of maybe one other subject that might be on there. So even though your specific question might be, what is a power of attorney, and what can it do for me and my mom, it could touch on a financial obligation as well. So that way, a financial person can actually chime in and says, well, think about this. Mm-hmm. And then the care can also chime in and says, oh, well, you mentioned this in your question. Let me let you think about this. So even though you ask one question, it could be answered by 3 or 4 people. Yeah. To kind of give you different angles of it. And that's something that I find priceless, because think back what I was just talking to you about, when people were calling me looking for advice on how to look after their mother, and they were confused with the lingo. They might not have had the legal situation in the back of their mind, or the financial situation, because we haven't even discussed that. Yeah. They're already confused with, they're looking for medical care and they're calling a non-medical company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, especially when you get into the finances, then it might be an attorney and an accountant and the real estate. I mean, there's just so many different pieces. And so um, it's really about building that team to help you out. And you don't even know you need the team. You just like, I just had one little question, I thought. You know?
Right, right. Everybody thinks there's a simple question gets a simple answer. And I guess you could get that, but that's not the whole story behind everything. One person called me and said, how can I get, home care for my parents? And they had no idea of the cost associated with it. And, with all the talk today about the rising of minimum wage is only going to not just increase the cost of that hamburger,
Yeah.
but increase the cost for care for mom or dad. And people are going to find it that, if you don't have long-term care insurance, how can I afford this? Or how can mom and dad afford this?
Yeah.
So even though you're calling about the care, we're trying to give you an estimate on, what are the costs of this? So before you go down that road, we're kind of opening your eyes completely to what you're really going to be up against.
Before we hopped on and we were chatting a little bit, and you had mentioned about being a vet and that you do some work in that area. Do you refer people to for veterans benefits? Because I think that's one of those things where a lot of people don't know that there's resources available to them.
Yeah. So I'm a vet. My wife is a vet. We take that really to heart. In my home care business, I had a 99.5% success rate in getting my clients their VA benefits. And I kind of cut myself a little short on that 0.5% of being shy of 100, only because I only got a partial payment to my one client. So I kind of said, well, that's really not 100%. So one thing that I did, and I'm not slamming our government. I think the politicians are doing that enough. The VA or really any government website is so confusing. They're so involved. They want to put every ounce of information on their website, and it's so confusing. And again, it falls into the understanding the lingo and the industry talk. I myself, as a veteran, I tried to go on the website to answer questions for my clients, and I was confused. It took me about 3 months to really dig into the VA and figure it out. Mm-hmm. And what I ended up doing, I'm not kidding, I had about 6 pages of notes. And I consolidated that into 2 500-word documents. And it literally streamlines the process for a veteran to go in and take care of these things. So people have asked me for those documents. I've published them online. I can actually share that with you as well. And it really streamlines it. It says, it's got catchy things that I submitted or my clients have submitted that we failed. So these were lessons learned kind of things are also in there. So it's not just, A, B, C, D, but when you're doing C, be careful of this.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of little things. And then I put a lot of frequently asked questions like, how long does the process take? What days? Because, if you were in the service during certain parameters of war, you qualify for that. So just to give you an example, just like my dad would qualify for the VA benefits because he was a veteran during specific time that's annotated by Congress in the bill. Unfortunately, my wife, as a veteran, does not, because the war that she was in is not covered under that law or bill that Congress passed. So a lot of people don't realize that. So just because you were in the Army or the military for that, they automatically think that, I qualify, and that's not the standard. And
Yeah.
it's also driven on income. And
Mhm.
just to give you a basic understanding, if you have money, you can afford your own home care. If you don't have money, the government will kind of help you, step in and see
Mhm.
what the hell. So people don't realize. They just think, well, I was a veteran. You owe me.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of like he got it, she got it, so I should get it. I mean,
Right.
because we don't realize how these bills are written, and sometimes we don't understand why, and sometimes they still won't make sense to us. I know it's a complicated process and it's a timely one, so that cheat sheet that you've developed is wonderful and will work fine until they decide to change up their website, and then you'll have to go through it all again, because.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, the process is changing with the VA right now.
Mhm.
They're actually trying to make it a little bit better and easier for people to qualify and also to fill out the applications. Um, it's illegal for me to fill out the applications for my clients, but I always tell them to fill it out to the best of their ability and let me check it before you submit it, because I've always found a lot of mistakes.
Mhm.
And I think that's where we were, best, we were most successful in, getting
Okay.
their benefits.
Okay. Now, you also have been a dementia specialist, and gone through training and things for that. So, does the Caregiving Answers do a lot with the dementia piece?
Yeah, we actually have a topic on that. I specifically added that because I find that there's so much unknown of somebody. You know your mom and dad all your life, but all of a sudden, mom or dad starts to change, and
Mhm.
you really don't know what to do. So we actually have a specific topic that you can go in and ask those questions about, and we kind of touch on that. I give advice on that. On not every um, answer that I give or recommendation is for everyone. So I kind of give multiple ideas on what you should do and what you should expect of the outcome. So, everybody's different. I mean, you can't go, you and I couldn't go to the same restaurant and go, oh, well, this is fantastic. And you go, no, I thought it was terrible. Just doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah. Well, and as the saying goes, every person with dementia is different, but we have to take that even further. Every person with dementia is different. Every care partner is different. Every environment is different. And even if those three things stay the same, it's going to be different. It
It
just
is.
every
It
time.
absolutely is.
It's no different than the rest of our life. But
Right.
when we're in crisis, we're all looking for that silver bullet, that easy fix, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
it's
A lot of
definitely.
I've gotten a lot of feedback from my recommendations, and I really owe it to the training that I went through, becoming an instructor in dementia care. And if I may just give a plug for Senior Helpers GEMS program,
Sure.
I was trained by Teepa Snow, and she is fantastic,
Mhm.
fantastic. She really emphasizes not what they can't do, but what they can do, and expand on that. And it really is amazing. It really helps people understand. You don't realize that you have to change the way you talk to mom and dad from
Mhm.
this point out. And it's not the same way that you and I are talking right now. It's completely opposite.
Mhm.
You have to talk in a sense where you're giving less choices to answer. It's got to be a 50-50, like yes or no. And
Mhm.
you kind of have to give them the answer.
Mhm.
So I've been getting some good feedback on that. And the training that I went through was really good, and provided a lot of good information for us
Yeah.
and our clients.
Yeah, it's really about being more conversational in some aspects where it isn't even a right or wrong answer. It's you're just trying to pick up clues along the way sometimes, depending on what stage somebody is in, and
Oh yeah.
looking at those nonverbals and all of those types of things. So yeah, Tipa's amazing. She does wonderful, wonderful job. Now I know you also have a really strong feeling that and one that I would imagine kind of saddens you as it does me, that, people prepare to have a baby, and even, they plan and plan and plan and try to have one, and then they still have 9 months to try to get everything together. But when it comes to elder care, this isn't something that we try to do, or that most of us even think about doing. Most of us kind of push it away. And I know I was like that with my own folks. I always looked at that old was 10 years older than them, because then I was always safe. And I wasn't going to have to deal with it. And then my
Right.
dad got dementia, my mom got dementia, my dad got brain cancer, and that theory, went out the window really quickly. But it is funny how we don't embrace that stage of life in terms of the importance and the effects, and really the huge ripple effects that happen. Just like when you have a child, everyone will say, gosh, I really don't know what my life was like before, because it changes
Right.
so drastically. The same thing can happen, when you're caring for a loved one, with elder care, but we don't seem to prepare. How do you feel it would be best for people to take this a little bit more seriously, and at least ease themselves into the process that it's okay to explore information here and get prepared?
Well, I have a saying that 99% of the people are reactive in this industry, and there's 1% of the people that are proactive.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, what I'm trying to say is, you're not going to prepare yourself for mom falling and breaking her hip. I mean, that's just something people don't have on their life of things to do.
Yeah.
Or plan mom or dad's funeral. You kind of do it when it happens. So when mom falls and breaks her hip, you get that phone call at work or at home, and it's, hey, your mom just broke her hip and she's in a hospital and she's about to be discharged. Can you come? And you're like, I live in California and mom's in North Carolina. And you have all but, seconds to answer that question, like, what do I do? So, being, and don't get me wrong, we're a reactive society, governed by a reactive, government. Don't do a lot of preparing up front. I've always told my clients' children that are coming to me for advice on how to look after mom and dad, I tell them, I says, you have to start with yourself. I mean, you can't talk to mom and dad about their legal responsibilities and make sure that they have their power of attorney and their wills and trust in order if you don't have your own.
Yeah.
And if you don't even understand the lingo of what a living will is, or a trust, or a power of attorney, how are you going to talk to mom and dad about having theirs in place? It's kind of, twofold. So I always explain to them, it's easier for you to talk to mom and dad if you prepare yourself. And this is where you have to be I guess not a reactive, but proactive.
Yeah.
About understanding it and doing your own stuff. So
we actually did it as a family. We ran into that, and my dad was like, nah, we don't have that much. It's not that big of a deal. And I just said, Tom and I are going to do this. Why don't you do it with us? And it just took some of the scary out of it. And it made it good business planning for life versus end of life planning. And and that's a huge shift that we have to take and look at. So I like that you do recommend that the kids get involved. I mean, literally, and walk the walk instead of just talking the talk. Because there's a big difference in terms of reception and comfort, and now you have somebody you can kind of bounce stuff off, and in common with, in terms of going through that, or what are you guys doing with this, or how do you think? And it's more conversational versus you need to get this done. The end is coming. You have to get prepared, and even if you're not stating it like that, I think a lot of times the person that you're projecting that to feels that, because you know they know they're getting older and they know they're not going to live forever, and
Right.
you know we should really have these powers of attorney and healthcare directives in effect when our kids turn 18. You know,
Absolutely, absolutely. My kids have theirs.
yeah,
Being in this industry, I've found that you have to be proactive. You
yeah,
have to,
yeah,
and it sometimes it's a tough subject. You know, you emphasized earlier about the end of life care.
hmm,
You know, preparing your own funeral is something that you may not want to confront or even talk about or discuss
hmm,
with family or even think about yourself. But boy, I'll tell you what, it's so important. And I believe it's called the Five Wishes
hmm.
brochure or pamphlet that they have out there. I mean, that's just fantastic. I mean, you can really sit down and put your thoughts behind something like that. And to basically have that, where you don't have to share any of that information with anybody, but if you fill it out on your own,
Hmm.
and have it in a in a place or a location that people can find it, you basically can go through that and you have all your wishes right there. So
Yeah.
it's tough. It's a tough subject, and it can't be handled easily by all
Mhm.
people all the time. So.
Well, just the simple question of, do you want to be cremated or not? You know, do you want, I mean, and if you've never had that conversation, I mean, that's daunting, you know? And for my daughter and I, we had that conversation and she's like, I don't want to burn you. I'm not comfortable with that. And my thing back to her was, come on, let me be small once in my life, you know?
Right,
Just be small.
right.
Yeah, I don't want to take up a lot of space, and, you know, you can sprinkle me around, and, you know, that's really what I want. I just, and I'm very adamant about that. And so, and we've talked about it for years, and she's more comfortable with it now. I said, you know, you can still, you know, have a wake and still say your goodbyes, and you can still plant part of me in the ground, you know, and all of those types of things. But this is really important to me. This is what I want, you know, and so, to not have that, and to try to guess what somebody would want, is really hard when we don't talk about those things, you know.
Oh yeah. No, it's tough. And my own kids, they had the same situation when we talked about it. I'm
Hmm.
going, look, these are not your wishes. These are our wishes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, Scott, let's talk about your second company, the Senior Providers Network. Why don't you share with us, you know, why you started it, and what services it offers people?
Sure, sure. No, I appreciate talking about both of them. Caregivinganswers.com is a free service basically for everybody on the internet to ask their questions. Unfortunately, when you're in a job and you get that phone call that mom fell and broke her hip, uh, you might find it hard to make ends meet if you're not working.
Hmm.
Uh, and believe it or not, looking after a loved one is not an easy chore, as you know, and I know. So you're going to have to take time off from work. And if you don't have vacation or your company doesn't offer some sort of benefits or something like that, you might be stuck in the middle of something that you don't know where you're getting into.
Yeah.
And just, if I may just give you and everybody listening to this a little background, there is over 30 billion with a B, $30 billion of lost wages and time, people taking time off from work
Hmm.
to look after a loved one every year. That's over $30 billion in lost productivity that businesses are losing. And don't get me wrong, it's for a purpose. I mean,
Hmm.
if an employee ever came into me and said, hey, my mom fell and broke her hip and I need to go take care of them, I don't even second guess myself. I'm like, go take care of family.
Uh-huh.
That's what you do. I mean, that's what
Yep.
business do, family first kind of thing. So it's unfortunate that you're in that situation and you don't need, your employer holding you up, making you a decision on how to take care of it. unfortunately, the conversation just stops there. You have now the time to take off to go look after your loved one, but you really are back in that sense where I'm confused. I don't know what to do. And who do I talk to? There are some companies out there that have employee benefits that actually provide some of this. Unfortunately, it's not enough. So let me explain where I'm going with this. If you're in that situation and you go up to your boss and you say, hey, you know, I need to take time off to go take care of my mom. If your employer doesn't have anything, you're on your own. If your employer does have something, you might go down to HR or go online or make a phone call to somebody within that employee benefits program that's going to help you. What I'm finding out, and I used to work for a company when I had to go take care of my dad.
Uh-huh.
My company was, at the time, 95,000 employees worldwide. I'd have to say that's a pretty large company.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't even have a program for me to assist in helping me figure out what I need to take care of my mom. But there are some companies out there that are really starting to look into this because it's a growing trend. I mean, here's another statistic. There's 10,000 people turning 65 every day since 2011. And the numbers are going to get higher and higher every day.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to the companies that have some of those benefits that they share with you, unfortunately, it's outsourced to someone that could be possibly in another country reading scripts. So if you're calling that 800 number, you don't know who you're talking to, what their qualifications are, and how do they know exactly what I need? And they're really basically going off of scripts, and it's very unusual, and I've actually seen these scripts. And there are key words that these benefit people are looking at. I need home care. I need, my mom's being discharged from a hospital. So these are key words that they key into, and then they look on the script that says go down and read this to that person.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really coming from an expert. And, again, you're back. That's like being on Google and typing in the wrong, home care, home health care. Well, if you don't know it, and I challenge everybody that's listening to this today, go type in home health care or type in home care and see what it says. Because if you type in home care, first thing that pops up on page one is companies that deal with home health care. And you're like, okay, well, I'm looking for home care, non-medical, and all this medical advice is popping up. So you're thinking, oh, well, I'll just call the first few numbers that are on this list. Well, again, confusing. Well, someone that's reading a script is not going to know to answer that, what home care or home health care, because it's not part of the script.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, that's what people are faced with. So what we did here, we became a specialized an employee assistance program. And what we're doing is we're only specializing in senior care.
Okay.
So if you have a child that has drug abuse, we're not going to help.
Mm-hmm.
Your regular employee benefit will probably be able to help you if you're having spousal problems or you're getting divorced or you need to talk to somebody about that. Your regular employee benefits program is going to be able to help you. We're not. What we're going to do is we're going to give you the sound advice. We're going to educate you on exactly what you need, make your understanding, know how stuff is paid for, and basically connect you right to a company or a professional that is an expert in that industry where it's needed.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you're working in California, but mom or dad is in North Carolina, you don't need the services out in California. You need it in North Carolina. And we kind of touched on that a little bit earlier about the legal side. It has to do with each state, and each state, each one might have licensing. Some of them don't. So again, we're going to give you a checklist that you can go down and really identify that. So our goal is to ultimately put you at peace of mind that mom or dad is going to be taken care of, that you don't need to take time off from work. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't love your mom or dad. It's just that, okay, well, I do need to take time off just to go see how they're doing. And when you get there and everything's in place and you're talking to mom or dad and they're saying, how you doing, mom? I'm doing much better. Thank you so much for setting all this stuff up. So instead of getting out there and setting everything up and being away for a week or 2 weeks, you might get back in a few days. And that kind of businesses. And that's what we're trying to do, is really help the employee as well as their family. And the big winner here is really everybody, because the employer wins at getting you back to work and less stress. Now, here's one last statistics. 15% of the workforce today is caring for a loved one.
Mm-hmm.
You think about your workforce in that sense. Think about those numbers as a company owner or somebody in HR going, wow, take my company, 95,000 employees. 15% of that people are being a caregiver for a loved one. That's a lot of people.
And my guess is that statistic is still low. Because a lot of people don't even recognize their caregivers, and so that makes a huge difference in and of itself as well. People just don't recognize when they're helping. They're just being a son or a daughter, and
Right.
there's different levels of caring.
Yeah. And Lori, here's something else that I've learned, and that this really plays a part in today's economics. A lot of people are hiding it from their employers because they're distracted at work.
Mm-hmm.
They might have a situation where they're at work using their company computer, looking for answers on company time to figure out what they need to do after work to go look after mom, and they don't want their company or their boss or supervisor to know that. So
Yep.
they're hiding it. So these numbers are, could be skewed in a sense where, how do you know that that person is actually a caregiver if they're hiding it?
Yeah. Well, and they're scared they're going to lose their job, that they're not going to be as attractive as somebody else, and they might be looked at more of a risk employee in terms of being able to, be there when needed and all of those things. And those are realistic concerns because companies are not as loyal as they used to be.
Right.
And it's a huge, huge fear, I think, for people out there. And there's a lot of companies that kind of scrub their computers looking to see, are people going to sites they shouldn't be? And instead of pulling them in and saying, hey, let us help.
Right, right.
You're out of here.
That's something that what we're doing, and again, I go back to the reactive proactive. We're being proactive with our stance, and I have nothing against employee assistance programs, but basically I thought about my employee assistance program when I was working at this large company. The benefits that I got, I didn't even know 90% of the benefits that were out there. So these companies that selling this benefit to these companies are going, they're betting on people not using it. Yeah. And the employer paying per month per employee for each one. We're different than that. We're not costing companies money up front. You're not going to pay, companies are not going to pay for this. What we're trying to do is be proactive in helping somebody on the back end, where we get advertising from our website and things like that to be on there. We are looking at controlling costs for companies, and we will go in and train the first line supervisor to recognize that a person is, could be going through this and how to react. I mean, again, going back to that person that walks in and say, hey, my mom just fell and broke her hip, I need to go take care of her. The supervisor is going to give you that deer in the headlights stare, like, okay, what do I do? What do I say? We're actually going to train this person to say, okay, here's what you need to do. Here's what I recommend. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, key for businesses today to realize. So we're going to be able to go in there and train their first line supervisors to understand this, so they'll be able to help.
Yeah, well, and if the companies are more compassionate and caring, their employees are going to be much more loyal. They're going to speak more highly. I mean, there's just this ripple effect. You're going to relieve their stress, so they're not going to be as distracted. They're going to feel supported. I mean, there's just so many pieces to it versus, well, you can't go. Who's going to cover? Or leave, but find someone to cover your work because it's
Right.
It's not coming here.
Let me give you a true example, and I'll leave the name of the company out, but I was talking to the vice president of this large company out in California, and it happened to be in the movie sector. And I asked him about this, and we were talking, and he says, you don't understand the impact our company has when that 25-year-old or 25-year cameraman has been working with this director, his whole life. So for instance, the director just looks at the cameraman and says, hey, I need this type of shot. And he mentioned some kind of characteristic, I need the Smith shot. Mm-hmm. So that cameraman knows what lighting, what cropping, what angles, everything that there is to know because he's worked with this director for the last 25 years. When that cameraman has to take time off from work to go look after a loved one, it's not that they don't have another cameraman to come in. It's just that they delay programming and they delay everything. And delay in the movie industry is very expensive. And it costs these companies millions of dollars because you got to pay the actors, you got to pay the extra set, you got to pay this, you got to pay that. They're off schedule. I mean, there's so many different things he was telling me about that. It was just amazing that if that type of person has to take time off and the director having to retrain the new cameraman, it's just, I was heartfelt when I was, listening to this. I was like, wow, I can't believe it. So anytime that we can work with companies like that to reduce that time or eliminate that time off work, they love it. They love it. And they love the fact that we're helping their employees, give them that peace of mind.
Yep. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. Do you, with this service, ever recommend or have resources for someone who can actually go out to mom's place? So let's say I can't go and I can't leave work because of deadlines, but you've just got somebody who's done this a zillion times and, who might be a geriatrician or, I mean, there's 10 million different names that people use for that out there too. I mean, just even the home care. Some people will do that, the 24/7, and they'll do traveling and moving people and, transitions. Do you have anybody that you would recommend for that, or is that something you'd see in the future?
Yeah, no, actually, we do that now. So what we've done is we've created a software that's basically a virtual gerontologist. And I'm kind of going to date myself. I know I got the white beard to kind of explain my age. But, the old Dr. Spock type books that basically says, my child has a fever. And it says, is your child's fever, between here and here? Give them 2 aspirin and, get some sleep. If it's between here and here for a certain period of time, go see a doctor type thing. So it basically follows what a gerontologist would be asking you during an interview to get you to solve your situation. And what we've done is this virtual gerontologist will put you into a life scenario. And then by answering a few questions, and it's not like an hour-long document, we're talking between 4 or 5 questions, we really can identify where you need to go and basically who we need to put you in touch with. So ideally, if you need to ask that question or have a question about that home care, you can go through this virtual gerontologist, which will answer that type of question. And then it gives you the opportunity to say, okay, do you want to connect to that profession or that service in that area where it's needed? So there's really only 4 pieces of information that's needed. There's your name, your
Mhm.
phone number, your email, and the last part is your the zip code of where the services are needed. And again, going back to what we talked about earlier, if you need legal services, it's going to actually provide a contact or a professional that's in that state or close where mom is, that's going to be able to help you, that understands the laws, the licensing and stuff that's in that area. So yes, we do. So we actually understand the situation that you're in. So you mentioned a lot of the topics that lead to home care, 24-hour care, basically going in and checking on a loved one. So what we would understand there is we would then suggest that you would talk to a home care company in that area.
Mhm.
Now, talking to them further, of course, the home care company is going to do an interview or an assessment of your needs, and they're going to go into a lot of detail. What we're trying to do is identify the situation that you're in and understand it and help you understand the situation that you're in and guide you with that.
Okay.
So, it's going to say, okay, you're going to need home care and home health care. So
Mhm.
here's what you need to do. Would you like to be in contact with a home care company where mom is? Sure. Home health care, on the other hand, we really can't control home health care because it's really driven by the doctors today. They're the ones that have to prescribe home health care. So we can't just say go out there and pick any home health care you want, because it's really driven by your doctor. But there is a little bit of education behind that we can share with that. There is the patient's bill of rights. Even though the doctor recommended this home health care company,
Mhm.
you don't have to stick with that company, and
Yep.
we're educating you on that. So these are little things that we kind of share and open that up, your mind to further questions. So when you're talking to the professional about what you need, you kind of know what questions to ask.
Yeah.
And we provide a checklist. You can literally go down and ask those questions, and we tell you what it is, why we're asking that question. You know what the answer is.
Well, and it's interesting too when you talked about, the physician will usually recommend the home health care, and sometimes, I mean, I've run across it with people where the physician really didn't know that somebody could go somewhere else, and a lot of the hospitals have their own home health care, and they're trying to keep the money there, and and that's fine. But if you have a relationship, you do have choice, and they're prescribing basically a service, but not a specific. It doesn't have to be a specific one that they pick. You do have input, but it's important for people to know that. Kind of same when it comes to hospice and things like that too.
You got it. And there's actually government websites that actually compare. It's almost like a Yelp for home health care, that you can go out and look for stuff like that and get their ratings and their numbers. And you can see all that. And that's done by the government.
Yeah, it's very complicated. When you get into this, nothing is easy because, like you said earlier, most of us wait till it's a crisis, and then we're not prepared. We don't understand the lingo, and you're not thinking right. I mean, you're just not. You're in overload. That's what crisis means.
It is, and there's just too much to understand. And what we're trying to do is put you at ease and give you a little peace of mind. Now, here's the thing: when you're at work, you might be concentrating on mom and dad, on how they're doing and what's going on. It distracts you from work, and you might forget stuff or do things or make you late, and that's just added more stress to the original stress that you're already going through. What we're trying to do is ease a lot of that stress by helping you understand that and put you in touch with the professionals that are out there that can help you with it.
Yeah.
And we can't make those decisions for you, but at least we can recommend who you need to talk to because we understand the situation. And that's a big thing, because this company was put together by professionals that are in the senior care industry. So a lot of times there are, and don't get me wrong, there are other websites out there that might do something that's similar to this, but this is written by programmers.
Mm-hmm.
That says, oh, okay, this is how it should work. But it really doesn't emphasize the industry knowledge that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go take that extra step for people to really understand. If you want to know what the definition is of something, we're going to give that to you. Plus, we're going to give you a little extra. We're going to say, you know what? And here's how it's paid for.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one of the things too is you can find definitions. And people can have great programs, but when you're in crisis, you need. I think most people need to feel understood, and they need that sense of compassion to really help lift them through the process. And so if it's just totally rote and you plug in this, plug in that, there's a big piece missing, because there's a lot of other questions that need to be answered. The other thing I wanted to mention with companies that I don't always think that they really get is when one person on their team is dealing with elder care, it affects the whole team.
Oh, it sure does.
And it affects the whole team, not just in work distribution, which is what I think most of them think about. But if they have a good team, they're all trying to help troubleshoot this too. So they're distracted with it too because they want to help out. And I really don't think most employers get that.
No.
How much talk there is at the water cooler and emails and the extra support. And so to be able to line people up with the support that they need so that they can feel comfortable. And now they're just talking up the support instead of stressing it. And, others won't feel like they have to jump in as much too. So.
Right. Well, Lori, let me just even take that one step further. I talked about a reactive society governed by a reactive government. We're reactive people. The company that you work for can be reactive as well. In other words, what I mean by that is they're not going to change their rules or their process until someone at the top goes through it and says, wow, we got a problem.
Yep.
I went and tried to take care of my mom, and this is a situation that I was not prepared for. We need to fix it. And again, that's being in a reactive mode as a CEO going, oh, I just went through this and I was lost. How many of my employees are going through this? And that's when they start looking at these things going, wow. So what we're trying to do is help CEOs and COOs to understand, to be that proactive person. And I'm trying to say, make them the hero for their employees to put something like this in place.
Yeah. So with employee assistance programs, a lot of them do a lot of white papers and just have knowledge-based resources. What I'm hearing from you is you have those resources, plus you've got this really human connection with them to be able to put things in place. And again, you're not there to reduce their stress, but it does reduce their stress when you can talk to a live person that you can understand, and isn't talking straight from script. That drives me nuts if I go call a company just for whatever. I just like, give me a live person,
Right.
Right.
No. Now there is one other service that we provide, and you're kind of talking even more about it, but I didn't want to get into it, but I figured I'd just throw it out there because it's actually not in place. We're working toward helping people that really don't want to ask those questions online. There's people that can do this and do it comfortably online, but then there are people that just want to talk to somebody. And there is a premium service that we actually will be offering to employers, and this is something that they would have to pay into, that you're going to talk to a geriatric care manager to basically take that virtual gerontologist offline and talk to somebody over the phone that says, here's my situation, what do I need to do? And you're going to talk to that live person. So that's something we've looked into, and we're finding out that some people want to do that.
Yeah. But, so then it's almost like a coach then at that point. Exactly. I think people, using that terminology, a coach or a mentor, it just makes sense, for them to be able to, or even a mediator, through these waters, makes a lot of sense there.
Peace of mind, somebody holding my hand, that,
Yep.
hey, this is actually working. I feel a little more comfortable that somebody's actually guiding me through this process, and it's not just something online. Some people are comfortable with it, some people are not. So,
Yeah.
but ultimately, you have that choice of connecting to somebody to assist you with it.
Yeah. Well, and I think another thing that I would personally like to see companies do is, I don't think most of them promote their employee assistance programs. Like you said, most people don't know. They get it in their orientation program, but they forget stuff even exists. But one of the things that I think would be really cool, and I have not seen anybody really do this, is to do like a routine, even if it's once a month, and allow employees to partake in kind of a webinar thing where they could just come and ask general questions to maybe a gerontologist. So people are out of the closet, and it's not an embarrassing thing, and it's a healthy, proactive move, for people to partake. And I know they do a lot of, some companies will do the brown bag lunch, seminars and stuff, but sometimes it's hard to get away, and that way they can still be at their desk, but they've got permission to gather this information. And it also gets the program kind of out of the closet, that people know this exists. If the company's paying for it, it's kind of dumb for it not to be used. In my opinion, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And if you got something like that on a regular schedule, at least it's out in front of people, and you're trying to minimize. And then employees will learn from one another, which will lessen the strife and the grief and the stress levels as well too. So interesting concepts, with both the businesses. So I really appreciate you taking time to be with us today, Scott. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Well, you can go to caregivinganswers.com, check it out, ask your questions, obviously. But you can also just reach out to us through the website, either by email. We don't have a direct line for phones, but you can always reach out to me at scott@caregivinganswers.com or scott@seniorproviders with an S at the end.com. And email me any kind of questions that you have, any assistance that you might need.
And Scott is just with one T.
Oh yeah.
That's a biggie. You gotta let people know that.
my mother, but when you go online, it has the spelling correct. But my name is Scott with one T. Blame my mom. We couldn't afford two when we were younger, so I'm stuck with one. And you really don't say Scott, so it's just Scott. Think about that one.
Okay, well, I'll tell my brother that one.
or just call him Scott and see if he gets it.
Well, it's like I said, it's really been a pleasure to have you with us today, and sharing your entrepreneurial spirit and in helping people try to live a little better as we age. And if there are businesses that are interested in getting an analysis, I'm sure you'd be more than glad to talk with them in terms how your provider network could assist them. So please reach out to Scott, and he'll get you taken care of.
Very good. Yeah, they can just go right to seniorproviders.com, and there's a link that businesses can log on and talk to us.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank our audience for listening today and watching Conscious Caring Resources with our guest, Scot Cheben. And we hope you found this information valuable and helpful to you. And we also hope that you'll share it with your friends, your families, your colleagues, and maybe even your company. Try to get them on board there. If you're interested in being a guest, please reach out to me at Lori, Lori, at Alzheimer's Speaks. And I'd love to chat with you. You can also just go to our website, alzheimersspeaks.com. That's kind of our mothership, and there's a big contact button right there. And give me a call or an email again. Again, thank you all so much for being with us. And again, Scott, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.